So welcome everyone. It's great to see you. It's great to be here in upstate New York. I'm Megan Foley. I am a member of your Congregational Life staff with the UA. I've been on board since August, and I live in outside Washington, D.C. in Silver Spring, Maryland. And when I came on board with the UA, now I'm going to have this confusion of I asked you to, I'm going to live with it. When I came on board with the UA, they asked me what I was particularly interested in because we all have our own portfolios, and one of the things I'm particularly interested in and in love with is small congregational life. And so they gave me that portfolio. Renee set up this, this workshop based on her knowledge of you guys and her hope that you guys will learn a lot. I think that the UA has been a little short on offerings just for small congregation life, and as I was talking to someone earlier, often it's hard to translate some of the stuff that you hear at GA and in workshops down to a level that fits and feels good. So that's part of what we're hoping to do is create materials just for a small church, and really hope, as Renee started saying, that you'll come away with a sense that you are actually possibly the future of Unitarian Universalism, because you offer something that people outside the faith are looking for. Authentic interactions with others, a chance to get off the hamster wheel, an opportunity to practice good conflict. So we'll be talking about all these different things, but all of these things can be found in spades at small churches. So I really hope that rather than, I know as a small congregation leader, we had a little bit of sense of like, oh, we're small about it. And I don't want you to feel that way, because I feel like really the rest of the movement has a lot to learn from small church. So what's going to happen today is I'm going to throw a whole bunch of different stuff at you. So it's going to go a little bit fast. We'll have time to break down and talk to each other a little bit. But it's mostly going to go by pretty fast. And you're going to find some stuff that you've already heard. You're going to find stuff that doesn't really apply. You're going to find some stuff that makes you feel, oh, I really want to learn more about that. That is very interesting. I think that could work. And you're going to find some stuff that makes you mad, right? So that always happens, right? And so I just want to introduce the idea that if something makes you mad, just let that be for a little while. Let it sit with you. Oftentimes I get mad when something bugs me because it's really something I might need to work on, think about, integrate. There's a question around it that I haven't really wanted to deal with. So if something makes you mad, just let that kind of percolate for a little while before dismissing out of hand. What do you do with dismissing? Today we're going to talk about four questions as we go from visitor to member. So the overall arching idea being, sure, you get visitors to your church, maybe every once in a while, not that often, or maybe in kind of a steady stream. How do you get those visitors all the way through to being active, participating members of your congregation? And we think that there are four questions involved in that path. How will folks find out about us? When people visit, how can we help them feel welcome and at home? What will make people want to join our congregation? And then once joined, how can we integrate them as members and people who are part of us, who are helping, who are closer in on that concentric circle models, right? Moving all the way from oblivious at the top to maybe not staff. Not everybody should be staff, but at least belong, right? So I'm going to talk about these four categories, and those are the things we're going to whisk through. All right, starting with, there we go. How will they find us? So for small congregations, right, you probably aren't going to have the full court press of ability to do all the bells and whistles, let people hear about you, the 5 different ways that will make them remember you, right, and come in. But you can do a few things well, and these are the things that you may want to think about. Where to devote your time and energy. Why does this only sometimes work? Oh, yay!
What's happening in the first one?
Maybe there's a extra secret button. Website. Think of your website as the new front door of your church. It used to be that people would drive by and see your sign on the road, and then they would come up to your church, and that's when you would start introducing yourself to them. Nowadays, people come to your door, they've already been introduced to you, for better or for worse, through what you have for a website. If you're like me, the idea of having to deal with a website is something that seems very big and onerous. But the UUA has just come up with help for all congregations, and I think this can be particularly useful for smaller congregations who may not have that IT person on their in their congregation somewhere who can manage this sort of thing. I would have pulled it up, except there's not Wi-Fi in this building. So the UUA has developed a website template now for any congregation to use. It's a template on WordPress, which is a fairly easy system to use. Most people who have some computer skills, this is like one step above me. I don't think I could, maybe I could. The marketing is, if you never put a website together, this is easy to put together. The template's already there, so all the things that you might have in congregational life, you can cut and paste and put in this. It's very pretty. I should have screenshot it and put it on, but it didn't occur to me. It's very pretty to look at, it's easy to use, it's fairly easy to set up, and it's already got all sorts of UU language in it. Because as it turns out, we think we all do things really specifically different, but actually, we sort of can use the same basic language. You can tweak it as you want, but it's fairly easy to put up. So I really highly recommend, if you've got someone in your congregation who can basically figure out their way around a WordPress site, go to the UUA, look up website template or WordPress template. You'll be able to find it. There's all sorts of instructional videos on there for you. Those people who created it are available to answer questions. Fairly easy to do. And it's the easiest way that you can have an impact on the oblivious out there who might want to know more about you. Another way small church can really get involved or get their name out is through community outreach. So if you have a local fair, like every year there's a lobster festival, like in Yarmouth, Maine, or something like that, you can have a strong public presence there at the booth. And also you can create, when there's local politics or local issue going on, if you are able to rally around an issue that some people, what's the word I want to use here? Be a voice for people who aren't usually represented by the traditional leadership in your town. So if you have some sort of local situation going on, you know that your congregation is able to rally around LGBT issues or transgender issues or something like that, then you can, even with just 20 people, can stand up on the side of that locally and make a huge difference, and then you're known as being on the side of that for your community, and people will be drawn to you, people who aren't otherwise served. There's basic questions. I'm sure all of you who are interested in visitors and membership already know that you should be able to be seen physically by your community. So you need to have a sign that is visible and maybe pretty. You need to have a building that can be seen and identified as a congregation. And whatever publicity you can put out there would be useful as well.
Do you have any biggest bangs for the bucks around some ideas around that?
I think website, that's going to be it. I mean, if you have people who are willing to do social media stuff, that can be combined with some direct mailing things sometimes. Mike Piazza, who was the guy that we just went to the conference of, he likes to combine social media and like a postcard situation. But that takes money and it takes some attention. So I think for most small congregations, you're going to want to kind of just do the few things you do real well. So I think paying more attention to your website presence would probably be more effective. But if you have extra time and money, you can expand that into leaflet outreach, or if there's a particular thing that you do, we'll be talking a little bit later about identifying mission, but if there's a particular thing that you think really represents your congregation well, and you want to then use that as the activity that springboards an outreach effort, that might be the way to go.
Are you going to talk at all about like accessibility and like getting in the building, that kind of thing? Are you going to talk?
No, but I think you've said it. People should be able to get into your building.
Well, for example, in a small community, you tend not to think about what it's like to approach the building for the first time.
Yeah.
And so what's really helpful is to say, you've got 3 doors here, And it would be really helpful to say which door should I come in.
Mhm.
So come, you know, you can enter here, you can enter here, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I will be talking about the first time someone's in your congregation and what that experience is. And I just remember my handouts are in the back of the room, so take a moment to gaze at each other or this lovely screen.
I'd like to ask you a question or for your opinion about the signs, maybe when you're getting that. Do you think it's a good idea to be provocative almost to the point of being a little outrageous with your signs?
I guess it depends.
Well, a sign appeared in the Buffalo area at a Buffalo Catholic church, and we decided we'd put it in front of our church.
Uh-huh.
It reads, "Jesus had 2 dads, and he turned out pretty well."
I personally love it. I think, let's go talk about mission a little bit, and then I think maybe that will help you, or if you're thinking about that. Renee, I can't find the,
There's one sheet that's on the back of, there were like 3 sheets and then a single sheet, I put that in the back of the 3 sheets.
oh, the single sheet's on the back, gotcha. Sorry, I left you with the boring one, and this is the more important one. I can't get this working. The far best, for any size church, the best publicity you can possibly have is you authentically talking to other human beings and telling them why you love your church. And guess what? That's often all the small church can afford to do anyway, so conveniently you're already on the cutting edge, right? But it couldn't be better for you to go out and talk to people that you know, or people that you see, or people that you have some sort of interaction with, and tell them why you think your church is the place for them to be. Of course, it might help to, oh, I see what you did. All right, I get it. It's all helpful if your congregation actually is awesome and life-changing, right? But I do think it is, so you probably go with it, right? Right? So it might work for you to just spend a little bit of time thinking about why it is, and some language around what it is about your congregation. Why do you go? You know, everybody has the opportunity to sleep in on Sunday, especially when it's cold and dark out. And you get up every morning, you go, and you probably not only go, but you actually work and put a lot of your heart and soul into it. I bet there's a reason for that. It might be worthwhile to spend a little bit of time wondering why that is, and then be able to be comfortable talking about it. So that this is on the back of another handout that you also want to have. So just some idea of ways in which you might be practicing an outward orientation in the way you think about how you relate to others with your congregation. There's a whole bunch of different ideas, and you can see which one is the one that you feel comfortable about. I mean, a lot of people aren't really all that comfortable just talking about their religion, but when you learn about someone else, you can hear from them what they're interested in, and then you can make it into something that your church is doing. Most importantly, you have to believe that your congregation has something to offer outsiders, and you have to tell people about it. That's the most important one. The rest of them are just sort of the gravy on how you might go about doing that. Is there anybody who, we have a couple of ways in which you guys are already doing this. Are there a couple of things you do to let people know about your congregation?
Well, we have a really nice website, thanks to Catherine over there.
Catherine is awesome with websites.
I like doing websites.
Awesome. Well, it could be a gift.
I
that
wish
you
I
could
knew it
offer
was
us.
free to begin with.
Well, now it is. Yeah, I don't know how that works exactly with the cost of it, but Lisa, go ahead.
We do have a new website also, and we have a Facebook page, both an open and a closed one, for our members and also for the public.
Great.
So we do have a social media presence. The website has made a big difference. It has drawn in some new people.
Great. And on your Facebook pages, does someone monitor those for content?
Yes.
Great. Good. And I assume you have some sort of standards for what are appropriate things to post and what aren't. Great. I forgot to mention up front that I'm hoping, I think it used to be back in the day that the UUA would kind of come down from on high and tell you guys what you should do, and I think things are changing such that we're all hoping to learn together in a learning community. So lots of times I'll learn things from you about how Smart Church actually works on the ground in different places, and that's probably why I like to ask questions about how you're going about doing things at work. So the next question is, when people visit, how can we help them feel welcome and at home? So someone's brave enough to pull into your parking lot, your nice and parked out in the space, and that worked out fine because they can get out of the car and not fall into like several feet of ice. And that's good. What do they find when they come up to your door? How do they know which door to go to? What happens to them when they come in? That's the overall question. So I wonder if you can turn to your neighbor and just talk about what in general, not necessarily in a church, but what in general makes you feel welcome and at home. Think about being invited to someone's house for the first time, or having to spend the night at someone's house that you don't really know. Just a couple minutes. Can anybody just shout out qualities that make them feel welcome and at home in general? What are the qualities that you experience when you do feel welcome and at home? Anybody?
After introducing yourself, introduce the person to some of your associates and members and maybe another.
So what's a broader
person.
quality is
Sure.
feeling like
Yeah.
you've met everybody officially. Yeah. Anything else?
Feed them.
What's that?
Say coffee hours.
Coffee hours.
Yeah.
Feed them food,
All of them.
sustenance for the body.
Knowing the lay of the land, you know, where things
You know where to
are.
go. Someone told you
Yeah.
where the bathroom was,
Yeah.
and someone told you like where the you know where the things are.
And also your space is user-friendly. Like, in other words, you don't particularly need somebody to tell you where to go, because the
You
sign
can
is
just
there.
tell. So you don't have to there's no barrier to.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So some things that can be really useful when you're asking the question of how can we make our space welcoming and friendly are to just try to come into your church, get a team together, and experience your congregation as if you've never been there before.
I'll tell you something else too, besides just meeting them and explaining a little bit to them. And I notice it here too. It wouldn't be bad to have background music. So if you notice when I stop talking, very silent.
Yeah.
And if this had something that felt
Something.
warm. And in any Unitarian church I've been to, there has not been that.
Yeah, that's interesting because that could be, it varies from person to person.
Except
too.
downtown Buffalo, and that's usually the choir practicing.
Uh-huh,
But
right.
it's not,
Some people find peace in that, and then other people find it really hard to hear when there's
Yeah, they
background
can't
music,
talk.
so it really can vary, right?
It's a slow.
So you have to, but it's better to know, right? So come into your congregation with fresh eyes and maybe a nose. Does your congregation smell weird?
Yeah.
Something to think about, right? So how many weirdness things are there right off the bat? How, because what you don't want to do is come off as weird. Probably the person who's coming into your congregation, it's very possible they don't know anything about church life at all, or they came from a church that had a set way of doing things and they want to know everything you have on is teaching them about Unitarian Universalism. Do you have signs on your wall that are weird? That are just, that refer to something sort of obscure or strange? Mike Piazza shared that in this very old congregation he just started serving. They had a plaque on the wall, and it was from 1840, and it had kind of racist language, or at least language that we don't use anymore. That was information for new people that even he touched the pastor about it, and even the pastor hadn't even been out and read it. Just walk by it. Everything everything on your wall that you think might be neutral or historical, that you don't even notice anymore, is information that a new person is gleaning about you, right? So how many signs do you have up that just say no, don't? I was just in an elevator in West Virginia, standing in a little elevator, and on the sign were two pieces of paper that had been tacked to the wall. And the first one said, no smoking. If you smoke in this elevator, 911 will be called automatically. And the next sign said, only 5 people in this elevator. If you have more than 5 people in this elevator, the elevator will come to a stop and will have to be reprogrammed. And I was just standing there by myself. It never occurred to me to smoke in it, but I already felt like I was in a lot of trouble.
Right.
So there's congregations, this happens all the time. Someone's been messing with the thermostat, so there's a big no sign on it. Don't touch this. Like, don't lock the door. Don't do this. Like, but for a new person, there's a lot of like, it feels like there might be even more rules. Like if you have that many rules posted, there's probably even more rules that I don't know about that are coming to.
We share a rentals, we have a rental space, we rent from the Grange, and there are all sorts of peculiar things that are not relevant to our congregation at all. Pictures of people that were alive 100 years ago, old frowny faces, and they do various ceremonies during the year. So sometimes there are black cloths covering some of these pictures. And then we have these elaborate chairs that belong to the Masons, and they're all over the place. I think it's interesting and quirky and cool. But for somebody coming in, it's like, what are those black, why are there black cloths? Are they practicing some satanic right here? You know? Yeah, you could really get the wrong.
The congregation I served also used to meet in Mason's Hall, and they had a picture of the mushroom cloth from Hiroshima that they covered every Sunday. They put the black cloth on that one. So if you were in a space that you can't control, how do you let new people know that these aren't our choices? Isn't it wonderful that we're able to rent this space? Of course, it's sometimes a little, we have these unusual pictures that we can't control, but we're happy, we're happy to be able to make this decision. At least it's sort of identified.
Yeah, one of the things that we have hanging on our wall that is useful is a poster I think we got from the UUA, and it's 100 famous UUs. And so when a new visitor comes in, talk to them about what UUism is all about, and I say, for instance, let's go look at this poster.
Yeah,
And
great. That's great,
And
Richard.
it needs to be, for a while, it was in a place where nobody could look at it.
Uh-huh.
I had it moved to where you could see it in front of it and point out.
And if you have things like that in coffee hour too, it gives
Yes.
like the visitor something to look at if it gets something awkward. That was very much true. When I first walked into the congregation I served, they had bought a whole bunch of teaching tolerance posters, which were all lovely. They're just pieces of paper that they bought, cheap IKEA frames, and put them up. But I learned about what so I thought, it might not be true, but I thought I had learned about what the value system of the congregation was by looking at that. And it didn't cost that much, and they all were very pretty. So, how does your artwork reflect?
I'll tell you another one too that is pretty good, and I could solve this Levy's problem, is put up the various symbols.
We have-
The cross, the yin and yang and all that.
We
If
have
they've got
that.
a lot of pictures, put them right over the picture.
We really
15
can't put
minutes.
things over their pictures, but we've decorated, we've made windows that fit into the windows that come out. It also adds about an hour of setting up every Sunday morning. I was one of the ones that she was mentioning. The crew that comes in every Sunday to set it up,
Yeah.
But you really have to, because it kind of identifies our place and it sets it as a sanctuary as opposed to the place where the strange cloths and
So I'd say for your congregation, it's not just setup, you actually have a ministry of setup, where you're creating a Unitarian Universal space.
Yeah.
That's what it wasn't.
You set up the sanctuary, you make it, and then you take it away every day.
Yeah, I think what I'm gonna do is just we're like way behind, so I'm gonna go through the thing and then hopefully there'll be, and I'm around at lunch, you can ask questions. So do you know what people fear more than death? Public speaking. So you may want to think about whether or not you're asking people that are strangers in your worship service to stand up and do something that they may well fear more than death. If there's something that you're asking new visitors to do that other people in the congregation don't have to do, that sets up a dichotomy, right? That may or may not be working for you. So it's just something to think about. Often when I'm a minister, I spend a lot of time doing public speaking, but when I put on my lay member hat, I'm like the biggest back of the room introvert church attender ever. And so another thing I'm going to point out is the idea of standing around with a specifically colored mug, which is often what our practice is, waiting for someone to come and talk to me because I've been identified as the stranger, feels terrible to me. I would never do that, never. And so I think anytime you're asking folks, when you think about what makes you feel welcome and at home, you feel like you're a part of things, even though you're new, right? So having in structures in place that identify you as a stranger and then ask you to do something you might be afraid of, might not be working. And of course, like there's this, one size fits some should definitely be your motto. So I'll say one thing, and of course the next person's going to say, but I love talking to people. I haven't talked to anybody all week, and I just really value the time that someone came up and talked to me because I was holding them out and they knew I was new. There are certainly those people. We just want to make room for everyone, right? Welcoming new people, right? How do you go from, what's the difference between welcome and being creepy? Right? And a lot of it comes from why are you welcoming them, right? We can be non-welcoming in that we didn't talk to the person. But we can also know in our hearts of hearts that if this congregation doesn't grow, we're all going to die. And so the foundation of our welcome really comes from desperation. We know that we would really love to see young families here because we don't have enough help in RE. And so we saw a young family. We wish we could be more multicultural, and we see someone who has a skin color that looks brownish, and we get all excited, and we're all over them. Like, don't be creepy. Are you welcoming, not creepy? And that means part of that is, let me see what they said. Let me just focus. Yeah. So part of that is, not being creepy is knowing why you're welcoming people. So again, this is internal work. Why do you want new people to be there? If the answer is we, the way we've been doing things, want to survive, that's not a good enough welcome. That won't work. Nobody wants to join a ship that's sinking so that you can be with them as they're sinking. Whether or not that is in fact the case, you will do better, you will grow, you will attract people if you understand yourselves to have a different purpose in the world than just trying to keep the doors open, right? So you can't, when you're thinking about what's the core of your welcome, why do you want a new person in your pew, the answer needs to be something other than we need you to give us money or give us volunteer time or something like that. And that's, again, internal work. So I think it makes sense. I think, okay, we're into my topic.
Before you pass that,
Yeah.
could you give me a few examples of on the positive side on that?
Yes, sure will. The answer is often simple, like, hey, why don't we listen to what this person is about? How did you find us? Find out a little bit about them, and then hook their needs and expressed desires up with someone else that you know. Someone comes in and they're like, well, my kids are 5 now, and I feel like they're asking me a lot of religious questions, and I'm not sure how to answer them. So we're trying to explore different things, and I looked up on the web that Unitarian Universalism has a free faith that could teach my kids, and that's why I'm here. Great, let me introduce you to this other family. They have kids the same age, so you're hooking them up with things that they have expressed a desire to do that will appeal to them. Is that?
Not really.
Not really? Not
You
gonna-
said that you don't want to tell them that we need them,
Okay, so
which is the actual truth, but that,
Yeah,
if that's not the message, why do we want them?
right. You want them because you think you're good for them. Now, I'm not saying that every church is good for everybody who comes in the door. In fact, every church shouldn't be good for every single person who might be willing to come in the door. But your congregation needs to have a sense of that they're good for the community in maybe some narrow way, but that they are worthwhile coming to. Why would you come to it if it wasn't, right? Why would the new person come? And so that's internal work. I think a lot of our congregations have questions about whether or not they are worth coming to. So if you're not worth coming to, make yourself worth coming to. That's the work of your congregation. If you are worth coming to, but you've never had to articulate it to a new person before, figure out how you would articulate that, and figure out how different people in the church might articulate it. How would a mom articulate it? How would like an older person articulate it? How would a young person articulate it? You know, see if you can get a bunch of different kinds of language, and that way when you introduce that person to the person, they'll be able to speak the same language.
As a corollary to that too, I think when a person comes in, in terms of an introduction, you could probably just welcome them and ask them, how'd you happen to come here?
Yeah,
And then they'll start telling them all this stuff.
they'll tell themselves,
Yeah, and then
listen,
you can start.
listen, don't talk.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I thought I only had a few copies of this, but it looks like you need a whole bunch. Anyway, this is a hospitality assessment. I thought there was only a few, so I was thinking maybe you could just take one per congregation if possible, but and copy it at home if you feel like doing it. There's instructions on how to do it, and it goes through a whole list of hospitable things that you might not have thought about. Not all, of course, not all of them will apply to every situation, but most of them kind of apply to almost every situation. So you can think of if you're being unintentionally off-putting, and also be able to identify the thing you really shine at. Like, what's the thing you do great? In my old congregation, they were every single person. So in the congregation I was a member of, and where I was ordained, we had a hospitality committee that was in charge of talking to people, like new people, and all the rest of us would just talk to each other. So the church I worked for, they, everybody in the congregation would talk to anyone. Like, that was just part of their culture. If you sat down as someone who's new, they would tell you the whole 9 yards about Unitarian Universalism. That's just who they were. So they were able to identify, like, we're awesome at this one, and that's what could be better, right? So they played that up. Now, we weren't so great at having, like, accessible buildings or having things be clean all the time, but we were good at that. And so we knew that that was something we can offer, and we could start to build it up. And a lot of what we're talking about today is how can you find the thing that you're already great at and make it, like, your thing, and really enhance it. So just the overall, I'm not going to have you talk, but which of the ways your church welcomes people say the most about who you are, for better or for worse? Question 3 is, what will make people want to join your congregation? Why would you go from I've been a few times to I would like to join your congregation? And I love what Renee said about why don't you just have that be a later process, have it be a long journey. I think that's fine. Let them really integrate. That doesn't mean they're not participating. It doesn't mean they're not giving money necessarily. It doesn't mean they're not helping out. But they are a member when they understand what membership really, what it really means. But I would say what makes people want to join your congregation is your mission. And by mission, I don't mean your mission statement. Because God help us all, the last thing I want you to do is get together and wordsmith some document. Please don't do that. That is not worth your time right now. What is useful is for you to understand why your congregation exists in the world. What's the reason for it? I bet there's something because you have at least, some odd people coming to it, right? So what is your purpose in the world? Why does your congregation exist? And here's a new tip, think small. So if your congregation is all older people, and you suspect that, and they've been friends for a long time, and they're aging together, and what they are good at is really supporting people in that process, then maybe your mission is to reach out to people who are older and are aging in those conditions, and you might really have a place for them. Narrow mission. If you're already good at being a welcoming sanctuary in a world that seems hurting and confusing and disconnected, then that's your mission. If you are really spectacularly good at connecting like little tiny kids with older people and you have a whole bunch of people who love just teaching classes and taking them out and doing stuff with them, then maybe like that kind of multi-generational RE is your mission. But it's like a one thing, and it's already something that you do and you love doing. Think small. And how does the thing that you already do well align with what the people outside might want? So, people in the world are having a hard time making meaning out of difficult times. They want a way to do good in the world, and they're not sure how to do that. They aren't given any opportunities. They want authentic relationships, not superficial ones, but really deep ones. And it doesn't mean that you're friends. Like really deep relationships with people that you're not friends with, that's rare. So it's not a goal to be all friends. It's a goal to have authentic relationships with people across a diversity, actually. How often do we create worlds for ourselves where everybody's kind of the same? Politically, certainly. And people need a place to practice good conflict management. We probably did not learn this at home, right? Your family didn't teach you. We're all about to have Thanksgiving, right? But we're all about to be full-bodied into an experience where conflict management has not been optimally practiced, right? And you're at work, so there's a hierarchy there, right? You have to do what the boss says, and you tell your underlings what to do. So conflict is kind of half resolved by that. In churches, we have an opportunity to show how do you actually have a conflict and resolve it and stay together and have that be something that is life-affirming and life-changing. Just the fact of being able to do any kind of conflict well is a gift that your congregation can give. If your congregation's in conflict and you start taking steps to figuring out how you can resolve it, like that's information that all of those people can take to Thanksgiving and make a huge difference in the world, right? Where else can people learn this stuff if they aren't learning it at church? So I want to just talk a little bit about younger adults. You know, like Chase the Millennial is sort of some people are into chasing millennials, but even if you want young families, I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, I'm kind of in the middle of Gen Xers, and my kids are about to graduate from high school. So although you probably do want me because I'm about to have a lot more free time and emotional space in my life, a lot of congregations say they want young families because that makes them feel vital and vibrant, even though those young families don't have a lot of money and don't have any time. So think about who your outreach is to and whether or not you really want to have an outreach to people who don't have a lot of money and don't have any free time. However, so what millennials are looking for, or younger people are looking for, are flexibility, but also high expectations, right? So you want to make the entry points into your congregation as multiple and flexible as possible and be okay with different ways of interfacing with your congregation. But you also want to set high standards where it matters. So we believe in these things and that matters in the world. That's really about being authentic and having a purpose. But flexibility around, do you always meet in person? What does it take to spend a whole Saturday somewhere? Like for people even my generation, I don't give up a Saturday very easily. A lot of our Saturday meetings and our repetitive face-to-face long meetings you'll notice the population of them tend to be older and people who are either used to meeting in that way or have a lot more free time in their hands. There are all sorts of amazing video conferencing stuff that's not hard to use now. The UUA uses Zoom for video conferencing. You can get a free version of it for 45 minutes. You can have a video conference. It can be a lifesaver in winter weather. And it can really help younger folks integrate. Like it's a lot easier for me to step into the other room after dinner and have a conversation on Zoom than it is for me to have to like change dinner to be all a different time and get in a car and drive somewhere.
Can we use Zoom?
Zoom's free, like that 40-minute version is free. Your congregation could also buy a professional account. I don't really know what that costs, and then everybody could access it when needed.
Right.
I don't think I don't know. It would be logical to me if it weren't that expensive, but that's not. So they did this, you may have heard the Pew Research Group did this whole big religious survey, and UUs were particularly interested in it because it showed that a lot of people are really primed to become Unitarian Universalists, although they're having trouble finding us, surprisingly. But they asked millennials what their values were. And so overwhelmingly, millennial values were being good parents, having a successful marriage, helping others in need. So not high-test career, not being famous, but having the kind of family structure that maybe they were missing growing up, right? So that's another way a church is perfectly primed to meet those needs. And if you can just explain to them why it is that you are able to meet those needs, it's not that you already don't, you maybe already would, but it's a question of communication. So when they come in your door, with kids, it's an opportunity for you to be explicit about the way you talk about what you're for and how you can help them. So the question of how you can help them, let me run through these Mike Piazza food for thoughts ideas. So he has, without a vision the people perish, without a vision people go to another parish. And he uses, some people use vision and mission interchangeably. We in the UUA use mission to talk about this thing, and he's actually talking about mission here. He uses them interchangeably. So he's saying without a mission, people at the road, they don't want to just come and hang out with you actually. They don't know you. They want to come because you're about something. Mike Piazza referenced Peter Drucker, who's a business leader. And he always asks companies, what business are you in and who are your customers? So the religious version of that is, why are we here? Why? And who are we here to serve? And if you can just identify that, the rest of it falls into place. She says. Yeah, this would be a good time for me not to answer the phone, right, in about a year when you figured out. You said the rest of it fall into place, but I do think everything becomes easier. What will you do now? Because you need to reach these people. That's who you're here to serve, right? Mike Piazza says, when you think the people in your pews are your customers, that's when the congregation starts to die. Renee talked about this a little bit, right? You're not there to serve your own members. You're there because you have a purpose in the world, and what you actually need to do is take off the bib and put on the apron, right? That's what membership means. So here's some more words of wisdom. You can identify your congregation's mission by asking, what is the one thing that we must do aside from worship? And what does it say about us? Or you can ask, what in our community won't get done if we don't do it? And then you can ask, well, what's keeping you from doing that? And you don't need to do much more than that one thing outside of worship that you must do. So don't worry about it. It's not a whole list of things. I'll leave this up for a second.
Do you have a copy of these slides?
Yeah, I'll have Renee email it around to them first. So Mike Piazza, again with the apron, Mike Piazza says, you can date the church as long as you want. But when you want to make a covenant with us, you take off your bib and you put on your apron. You are no longer a guest, you are the host. You are no longer a critic, but a creator. You are a producer and not a consumer. And that's why they give out aprons at their new member ceremonies to make it real. So how can I serve? How can I help? Being the watchword of the member of your church. And this is what actually unchurched people, your new people, are looking for. A way that they can serve and help and be a part of a bunch of people who believe that that's so important they can't not do it. New people will be coming to you in droves. As long as you can communicate that, I guess I should say. Question 4 is, how do you integrate new members? So there are a lot of ideas around this, but I'm going to suggest this one, a new one that I'm working on, that I call the win-win of the one-on-one. So community organizing starts with relational meetings. That means two people, one of the community organizers sits down with someone that is new to them, and they sit down for half an hour, 45 minutes, and they have a deep conversation about what that person's needs, hopes, desires are. And from that, they glean what their leadership potential is, what their pastoral needs are, what they're really all about, and the person they're talking to feels heard. How many of us really get to sit down with someone outside of a therapist and really feel heard? Not that often, not even at home, right? They feel really heard. They can understand a little bit more about the congregation. So I'm recommending campaigns of one-on-one relational meetings in congregations. They can be done in large congregations, but if you have a small one, it's that much easier, right? If someone, start with your own membership. You all know each other, but do you really? Like, sit down and see if you can have conversations around. Here, let me hand out I think the thing you already had actually has it says relational meetings. It's on the other side of your outreach thingy. So a relational meeting is a 30-minute meeting with the purpose of establishing or deepening a relationship, right? I think it might be a really neat thing to do with every new member to your congregation. Sit down with them now that they're wearing an apron and figure out who they really are and what their hopes and dreams are. You can see some of the questions in the handout. The purpose of it is to start or deepen a relationship with other leaders, potential leaders, or allies, which I think everyone in your congregation is an ally, a potential leader, or going to be a leader, right? So you're hoping to seek out talents to get to know the person, group, or the community they come from better. So you finally have, a person with young kids in your congregation. What a great time to talk to them about what are the needs of people like you? What are the needs of parents in our community? They have a lens into something that you might not have had before. So you want to understand the other person's self-interests, needs, values, and passions, and figure out if this person is a leader or could be a leader in your congregation. It's important to, I think what it is not, is later. So you're not having the meeting you're only having the meeting to get to know the person. You're not having the meeting to figure out if this is actually the person that you can stick on your board after they've been there for a year. But you might find out from them that they've done a lot of leadership stuff in other places. Or you might find out from them that they really hate sitting, but what they've always wanted to do is run a community garden or something. What great information for you to have as a leader when you decide, oh, well, maybe our mission of the church is running community gardens all over town. Hey, I know exactly who I should talk to about that. Who should do the meeting? Church leadership or well-integrated people? You can purchase or develop a really awesome church database where anybody who does this kind of meeting can type in interesting information about the new people and then you have it to look up. But in small congregations, we don't really have the money and time for that usually. But if you have people doing the meeting, I was having my congregation think about having just board members do those meetings. It makes the board members feel like they're doing their work for a reason. This person, this person's new, they're energized, they chose us, they want us. That's great for your leadership to hear. And then when your leadership's doing that person's leadership work, they will have that information in the back of their minds. I remember Sheila said she would love to do, run casseroles out to people, whatever it is. So you want to pick either church leaders or people who are well integrated. You, of course, want to pick people who are able to listen and respond compassionately. Listening being the key. I think there's some in there, it says, you're not there to talk about yourself that much, unless it helps connect. You're not there to even talk about the church all that much, except to connect the person. Your focus, your orientation is on that person. So you need people who can do that. I think you want interculturally competent folks. So how many ways can we have diversity in the world? Generationally, gender, racial, class. The list goes on and on. And what you don't want is someone who, you met Jose one day and you call him Jesus the next day because to you those names kind of sound the same. Or you don't want someone who thinks it's weird that you want to communicate by Facebook, but this person's generation has done nothing but that. So you just want people who are aware that at least aware that there are intercultural differences. And if you want to know more about really how to bridge some of those divides, Renee, who was just speaking, has tons of trainings on that, and her institute has tons of trainings too. So I would really highly recommend taking those, because the most off-putting we can be is just to be explicitly racist when people come in the door. And it's so easy to do because a lot of us are white folks and we spend a lot of time with white folks and we don't know. So give yourself permission to learn, right? You had a question? Okay. So here's what it is. What it is not an interview, not trying to sell anything, including the church. They're already members, right? So I would recommend doing this with new members, not necessarily like any old person who comes in the door. Although you could have a different kind of conversation with people who are coming in the door, but it might be a little too much. I think you want to maybe have membership feel like, you get, not only do you have to wear the apron and serve the community, but you also get things as a member. Like you get to be known and seen in a really deep way. I think that's cool. It's not a survey, it's not chit chat, and it's not therapy. So there's plenty of ways to train counselors so that if the person actually is super needy, there's ways to keep your conversations from becoming therapeutic in nature. But it's something for you to remember. So what I was thinking was maybe to try it out. Why don't we get in pairs and pick one question out of this list and ask it. We have 15 minutes before lunch. So why don't we ask it for 7 minutes and then the other person can respond, or 5 minutes, the other person can respond, and we'll have some time.
Family situation.
It's good if you can't stop talking. It's good.
You don't stay here.
So, what were our observations? Was it hard?
It wasn't that hard, no.
Was it hard? Was it hard not to do, was it hard not to chit chat instead?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy here, I mean, we're all Unitarians.
Right, so you're not supposed to chit chat. Right, so was it hard to stick with what the purpose was, right? You can chit chat. Chit chat at coffee hour or some other time. Everybody's gonna have plenty of time for chit chat. That's not what we're lacking, but we are lacking deep, meaningful connections, right? Well, any other observations about, did anybody learn something they didn't know before? Anybody learn anything?
Well, I don't know if you call learning anything, but one of the things that you mentioned is to go from a visitor to a member. And the three of us said, like, to go from a visitor to a member took us one time.
Yeah.
I mean, we walked in and we knew this is where we belonged.
Mm-hmm.
Never had been Unitarian or had gone to a Unitarian church before. And, so sometimes people go very quickly. And actually, most of our newer members they walked in and like within 1 or 2 weeks, they wanted to sign
So there's something about what you're doing that identifies you and makes people able to.
I have no idea, but people that come back for 3 or 4 weeks never come back. Well, so I know, I don't know.
Well, so maybe it's true that so there's always going to be a group of people who get it right away and are your like core people that should have always been there from the beginning. And so maybe your work is to think about those folks who, for whatever reason, don't have that happen, which I would think would be most people, right? Most people don't latch on right away. They're not in that place, their phase of life. They're maybe suspicious or have questions or whatever it is. So how can you be more convincing during that time period? So you don't have to be one of those immediate adopters. But back to did you have a?
I think people, when they come in, they've kind of expectation that they're going to belong, or they're trying it out and they're going to move on. So part of it, for me anyway, I think it's kind of a numbers game. Like how many people can you get in, and kind of, how quickly can you tell your story, or put yourself out there of what your congregation is about, and then if it works, great. If it doesn't, then move on. And we have that churn through our door.
Yeah. And how much of a better numbers game it would be if you were more explicit about who you are to start with, so that the people people have already done research on you on the web. They've already, if you can get them to self-select out, then the people you have coming in are already kind of halfway there.
Right.
And if they meet the kind of people they are hoping to meet. I mean, again, it's aspirin. Like, what is our vow of the universe, right? We're not just expecting you to meet rich people with fancy jobs. What we want to offer is authentic relationship and a chance to connect and an opportunity to meet people like you and also not like you, right? So that's what we're offering, but then our congregation, each of our congregations has a specific narrow purpose in the world. And so if you want to do that, then you might want to be here. If you want to do something else, then somewhere else might be the best fit, and that's a win-win. If you have people coming in who say, oh, I don't want to be with you because I understand what you're about and I'm not about that, that's important information.
Yeah, one of the things I do when I have visitors and they ask the question, what are you all about and so on, and don't have a lot of time, I say, take a look at the readings in the back of the hymnal.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what the readings are and who the authors are, and that gives you a real good indication of who they are.
Yeah, that is true.
We have an inordinate amount of rather involved non-members. And I don't know if that, in my mind, it seems to be a problem. Maybe it's not, in their minds, it's not. There are a lot of things as a non-member you can't be on board, you can't be a committee chair, it's work. So they don't have to do the work, but they're really involved in some committee stuff, involved, but it's almost like a different attitude. They're really involved, but there's a tendency for them to say, well, you do this, and the board should do this. There's a lot, they don't, on some level, they're very involved, and on another level, they're not. There's kind of this attitude, well, we're not, you should do this, you should do this. And I don't know what to do with that. I mean, they all have different reasons for not joining, and they're not joiners, or they're this, or they're that. But it's so involved in there, they're almost every week. It's a real strange thing.
Yeah. So the UUA is asking questions around maybe changing membership, the concept of membership not changing, but asking questions around whether or not membership is the right way for us to think about people who come to our congregations. Especially because Gen Xers and millennials don't join things. Like, that's just saying you can be a member of us is not appealing. Sometimes our structures are set up so that being a member actually is far worse than not being a member, right? Like, I don't want to be on your board. So what I'm hearing is if I don't be a member, I can give less money, I can do the fun things, and no one's ever going to call me up in the middle of the night because I have the key to, so.
Well, some of them
Why
are
wouldn't
pledges.
you?
A lot of them are they're pledging friends. And
Right.
we've got, we distinguish between members and friends, but they're all part of the congregation. We've got very
sure.
involved friends,
Right.
and they pledge. Some of them are pledging friends, and when you ask somebody about something, they'll say, well, gee, so-and-so's a member. It's like, well, no, they're not. Oh, really?
Yeah.
But we see them every week,
Yeah.
and they're always there in the meetings, and it's like,
So I think you should both feel free to let go of the concept of membership as being like real defining, like these people belong, because you have people who are belonging in many different ways. So like belonging versus membership. And then I think also you have those apron wearing key people and how to make that appealing, not just an obligation and a responsibility, but also something that what do you get from that? Which is something to think about, right? And if the answer is more work, then you've answered your question about why people don't want to be members, right? So.
In downtown Buffalo, she just brought that up about non-members, what they used to do, and I don't know how they finally caught it, but a lot of the people would drop their kids off to the Sunday school program.
And then leave.
And then go to the gym. And then, especially when they used to, when they're in 5th or 6th grade, they take them to all the various churches and they explore.
Oh yeah.
They have a wonderful program in there now. I don't know.
So what's the flexible way of thinking about that? So there's a need there. People want RE for their kids, but you're not meeting some other need, right? And whether or not, so it just, these opportunities where we might choose to go like, what's wrong with those people? And I am the queen of saying that. You can also choose to say, well, what can I learn from, like, what must that mean? How can I be curious about what that indicates? So then the good news, they want their kids to have some sort of religious education. And that you're doing a good enough job of providing that they're willing to send their kid to that. It's not that easy to organize your kids and get them somewhere. So that's positive. Now you can ask questions about, well, what needs aren't being met or what expectations aren't being established or and so on and so forth.
If you want to be very compassionate, you can also say, we're supporting that family and maintaining their health.
Right? Right. Yeah, I think it really.
That would be critical, because we always go there.
Yeah.
You know, let's say we're supporting her and taking care of herself so she can be a good mother.
Yes. Yeah. I know in the congregation I served, people wouldn't come with their kids every Sunday, and people would be like, but why haven't you been here? And they're like, and the families were like, yay, we come every month, like once a month we're there, we get together and we're there. And so on the other side, we're like, but we have this culture where you go to church every Sunday, and the people who are like, you've got to be kidding me. This is my only morning to do anything at all that I can be flexible about, and I choose to come to you once a month. So like, how can you, and I think the more you have these kinds of open conversations with people, really, like, and with a curious mentality, tell me about why you chose to come, or what do you do when you're not here, or if you can just be curious about it, you can get all sorts of information that then's useful for you, so you can structure the way you do things in a way that's appealing to folks who have real, I mean, nobody's doing things for no reason, or just because they're evil, usually. Like, there are very few people who are just wandering around being evil, or slackers, or doing things for no reason. So if you assume, like we probably should with our principles, that people are operating out of some sort of system that makes sense to them, then what the answer is, well, how can I go and find out more about what their world is?
I don't know where I heard this, but there's a church somewhere that they have the same service 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
And you're only expected to go to one and stay home and not with your family. No.
That's
No, it's very common in AABB month, so, and then you can maximize your workload too, right? So someone will tell the trouble putting a service together, maybe even your paid pastor, but they're only preached twice a month. You'll always have, if you have a half-time minister, you'll always have a professional in the pulpit if they're only preaching twice a month. So yeah, there's a lot of different things. I mean, obviously a lot of congregations don't have services every Sunday to begin with, and that actually kind of works. You could do something alternate on other Sundays, like a work day or a charity day or something where, not work for your congregation, but like work out in the world. And you might find that if you have a multi-generational experience like that, that families would want to do that because they also maybe don't want to be segregated on a Sunday if everybody's working over school. I was an at-home mom for a number of years, so I came on Sundays so that I could put my kids somewhere else. But you know, if you're away from your kids all the time, maybe you want to do something with them rather than have another time you're split. Any other questions? It's supposedly lunch.
Can you give us some examples of the sort of projects you could do as a church on a Sunday morning alternative to having a program?
Well,
that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think maybe you know more about it because of I think it's based on where you are. Yeah. Things like serving meals, like things that we have in DC are soup kitchens, but we have a lot of like charities. Soup kitchen, we can go and sort clothes at a place that gives clothes out. And they're open different hours because there's like the face-to-face service and also like the organizing the backroom stuff. I think you could call almost any local charity, nonprofit, or government agency and ask, is there an opportunity for a service on Sunday morning? And see what they have, like delivering meals. And it doesn't even have to be like one-on-one service. It could be, creating a community garden, sprucing something up. It really can range. I think if you did a quick Google search, you could probably see a whole bunch of different, different opportunities.
How close are you to finishing up?
We're done. We're just having questions.
Okay, perfect. Lunch probably about 5 minutes or so.
Okay. Should we just continue talking until then, or?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.